Yeah, welcome back to Pagitt Radio, broadcasting live out of the Twin Cities. In the studio here is poet Victoria Peterson-Hillique.
Hi.
Hey, Victoria. Thanks for sitting in today as a sidekick. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
You should think about this as a regular gig.
How much will you pay me?
Well, I'll double the current sidekick's salary for you.
Is it paid in M&Ms or
Double.
currency?
It's normally paid in oatmeal. I give him a big bowl of oatmeal in the morning. We're going to be joined here in just a moment by Charles Drew. Charles has written a book called Body Broken, and he wants to raise the conversation of, can Democrats and Republicans sit in the same pew?
No.
And so we're going to call him here in just a moment and ask him to tell us more about that and what he's thinking and these dilemmas. And I think maybe the answer is going to be found in not having pews. But I don't think that's actually a simple enough answer to solve this problem.
The book would be too short then, and it looks fairly long.
So I owe Charles something, because last week he was supposed to be on the show, and I neglected to have him on the show. So I'm going to call him now and see if he's still willing to play with us.
I'm Charles Drew speaking.
Hey, Charles Drew. Doug Pagitt from Pagitt Radio.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you? I'm so sorry for last week, and
That's not a problem.
I was telling the listeners that I had invited you to be on the show, and then didn't call you to be on the show because I scheduled somebody else in Memphis. So
right. That happens. How is the connection for you? Is it all right?
It's okay. It's a little jittery. How is it for you?
Yeah, it's okay. Let me just try a different phone, my extension. Tell me if this is better.
All right. Well, it's not better yet, but
That phone must be far away.
Yes.
Is he racing through his house?
Or it didn't work at all. So Charles is the author. He's also a pastor of a church in the Harlem area, I think, of New York. I'm going to ask him about that. I think he's near the Columbia campus. So I'm going to we'll ask him about that. And I think I'm gonna ring him back here in just a moment, is what I think I'm gonna do.
Okay.
Sometimes our technologies work flawlessly, like they did with dear Ani, and sometimes they might have a little bit of work to do.
Mm-hmm. This gives us a chance to.
To what?
I don't know.
You're just killing time. You're just thinking it gives us time to do something.
On the back of the book, it says that he helps Christians of all political persuasions understand how to practice servanthood, cooperation, and integrity. Oops.
Well, that's not good.
No.
So he's somebody who's saying that Christians of all stripes can have some kind of
practice servanthood, cooperation, and integrity.
So maybe he's suggesting that there's something, there's an alternative to political argument.
Maybe we just do good things together and stop talking about it.
I think he's ringing me right now on a different phone. So you're one who comes from the idea of, hey, let's find other partnerships to be in.
I mean, I don't know. It seems more viable than arguing about our ideological differences.
Mm-hmm. I think you're probably right, but doesn't it make you wonder why? Because obviously, like, hey, we could all find things to partner on, right? We could all find things to do together that we would all agree on. What is it about us that then turns it into these other conversations, right? That turns it into these other things.
Why are you doing what you do? We can't just do this good thing together.
Hey, Charles, let's try this again. Sorry about that.
Is this any better?
I think it'll do. It sounds fairly similar, but I think it'll do for our conversation today.
Okay, great.
Great, thanks. So we've told people a bit about the book Body Broken. Can Republicans and Democrats share a pew? And we came up with an idea that maybe if you get rid of the pews, that would solve the problem. Do you think it's that simple? If we just went to chairs or couches or something, would that?
Yeah, that easily solves the problem.
That's right.
Obviously it doesn't.
Yeah. So you've been trying to invoke and to incite this conversation in Christian community for quite some time. This isn't just a 2012 question. You've seen the development of some kind of a segregation or separation within Christian communities, and you've noticed that happening over a period of time, huh?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I think ever since the religious right rose and Christians began to evangelical Christians began to realize that they really could impact public life, which is a wonderful thing. I think the Christian community has grown in its awareness of that, and then there's developed even within evangelicals some differences as to the best way to impact, and I think that's led to a more and more division among evangelicals, and so you have a situation today in which it seems to me that very often evangelical Christians, and my book's written, it's written broadly, but I do have the evangelical church in mind. You reach a situation where sometimes it's very difficult to make a distinction between the polarization within the church and the polarization within the culture. It seems to be almost as extreme. Mm-hmm. Either churches are blowing up or they're already dividing ahead of time on political lines. So you can have an evangelical black church, which is often going to tend to be Democratic, and you have evangelical white churches, especially suburban churches, which will tend to be Republican, and that to me is problematic. We have to find a way to be engaged. I'm not saying we should withdraw from political engagement, but you have to find a way to do it so that the church doesn't blow up or go its separate ways from each other, because what should unite us is bigger. Is a larger thing, a more powerful thing than political differences.
Yeah, Victoria, who's the sidekick here on the show today, and I were talking about this earlier, and we were mentioning that maybe your argument is not even that there's a divide, like a brick wall within the congregation where the Republicans sit on one side and the Democrats on the other, but the brick walls are actually the outer walls of the church that separate it from the other churches that are different. Right, where someone can't stay in a church very long if they don't have the same political sensibilities as the organizers.
Yes. If you feel like a second-class citizen over the issue of political strategy, I think politics is a strategy for advancing values. If you feel like a second-class citizen, you're not going to stay in a church very long, and you're going to go somewhere else. I'm not saying the churches mustn't articulate high moral principle. They must. They have an obligation to do that. But the trick is in whether the church is going to allow there to be some flexibility among its people about the best way strategically to advance those values in the culture.
Now, what a lot of people say is, well, the best way to do that is never to talk about it, right? So, just don't bring it up and do other things and squash the conversation as soon as we can, which seems to me to just be like a bad, kind of an unhealthy family, right? Like if this was a family that got together with, a therapist and said, well, we fight all the time. So we've decided rather than fighting, we're just not going to talk to each other. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the miracle that we should press for is where we really do talk about our differences, because there are differences. Mm-hmm. And yet we stay together. That's I think we can't withdraw from political and social engagement. We have to be involved. Jesus isn't the Lord just of our private lives. He's the Lord of everything, which means he's the Lord of our public lives as well. And I think one of the good reasons why we fight with each other, we should never fight, but one of the good reasons we fight about each other is that if we take that reality seriously and we start very seriously trying to love our neighbor as ourselves, which we must do, we're bound to disagree on the best way to do it, and so we end up fighting. But I think there's a bad reason why we fight in-house also, and can I share that with you?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So
name names if you could. Like, give us examples of people who do it this way. That really spices it up.
I'm going to do my best to avoid naming names.
Okay.
Yeah, but here's the negative reason, I think, and I'm sure there are others as well. And it's a subtle one, and it's a hard one to identify. But the prophets speak against this reason all the time, and it's idolatry. And let me explain what I mean by that. Idolatry is putting our deepest hopes in anything created. So it could be, for example, putting our deepest hopes in a vision that we have for America. There's nothing wrong with having a vision for America. The question is whether it's an idolatrous vision, whether the vision for America is the place where we're putting our deepest hopes. Or it might be a policy or a strategy whose aim is to advance that vision. It might be a candidate, or it might be, there are plenty of Christians who aren't involved at all because their deepest idol is leave me alone. They just want to be left to themselves.
Sure.
So there's this deep, and here's the funny thing about idols. The Bible tells us over and over again that idols are fragile because they're not God. When we put our hopes in anything created, we're putting our hopes in something that's fragile. Well, a fragile hope inevitably leads to fear because you can't keep it, and fear inevitably leads to anger or panic or subterfuge, and as a result of that, we end up fighting with each other over these things because we're afraid. And the Lord doesn't want us to be afraid. He cares about our hearts as we enter into public life, as much as He cares about what we actually do on the surface. And so, if whenever I'm chatting with a friend who's really angry about some political issue or some issue, something that's going wrong in the culture, I ask him to try to dig beneath the surface and to try to identify if there's something he's leaning on more profoundly than he leans on the Lord. It's driving that anger. And I'm not against righteous anger, but I think most of the time our anger is a mix of righteous stuff and unrighteous stuff. And if we're going to learn to get along with each other, we have to sort of sort that out. We have to be alert to that.
I'm just going to tell people who we're talking with. This